15 everyday school moments British children had in the 1960s and 70s. If you grew up in Britain during the 1960s or 1970s, school life was a world away from what it is today. There were no smartphones pinging in pockets, no interactive whiteboards lighting up the classroom, and certainly no fleet of cars waiting at the school gates. Instead, your world was defined by the clatter of heavy wooden desks, the ever-present haze of chalk dust, the firm voices of teachers who commanded absolute respect, and the unforgettable taste of warm milk from a small glass bottle. In this nostalgic journey, we will transport you back to 15 everyday school moments that were the fabric of childhood for a generation of Britons in the 60s and 70s. Moments that seemed so ordinary at the time, yet have become truly unforgettable with the passing of years. This isn't a list of special occasions or once-a-year events. It's a tribute to the daily routines, the unspoken rules, and the shared experiences that every British child from that era knew by heart. You'll remember walking to school alone, a simple act of independence that would seem remarkable to parents today, lining up in the playground in perfect, silent rows, as teachers with watchful eyes inspected your hands and uniform. The unmistakable, authoritative sound of the school bell. A sound that dictated every minute of your day, from the start of lessons to the freedom of playtime. Morning assemblies, a hall filled with the sound of hymns, the slightly out-of-tune notes of a piano, and the stern, moralizing tone of the head teacher, sitting at heavy wooden desks, their surfaces carved with the initials and history of decades of pupils who had sat there before you. We'll revisit the unique atmosphere of the mid-century classroom, the distinct smell of floor polish mixed with chalk, the quiet dread of being called up to the blackboard to solve a sum, and the immense importance placed on forming your letters perfectly in a lined exercise book. Mistakes weren't simply erased and forgotten. They were crossed out with a single neat line, a permanent reminder that presentation was just as important as the answer itself. Number 1. Walking to school alone. Long before the school run became a daily ritual, children walked to school. From an age that would likely cause alarm today, you would set off on your own, or with a small group of friends from the neighborhood. Parents rarely, if ever, escorted their children all the way to the school gate. It was a given that you knew the way. The roads were generally quieter, and every child had their safe routes memorized. Navigating familiar streets, shortcuts through alleyways, and the friendly wave of the lollipop lady or man who saw you safely across the busier junctions. This daily walk was your first taste of real independence, a small adventure that bookended each school day and taught you self-reliance without you even realizing it. Number 2. Lining up in the playground the moment the school bell rang to signal the end of break time. A well-rehearsed drill began. You would stop your game instantly and run to your designated spot in the playground, where your class lined up in 2 neat rows, often organized by height, with the smallest at the front and the tallest at the back. As you stood there, a teacher would walk down the line, conducting a silent but thorough inspection. They would check for clean hands and faces, ensuring you hadn't brought the dirt of the playground into the classroom. Your uniform was also scrutinized. A tie not done up properly, or socks that weren't the correct color, would not go unnoticed. Absolute silence was expected. This structured transition from the chaos of the playground to the order of the classroom was a non-negotiable part of the day. Number 3. The sound of the school bell. The school day was governed by the bell. It was not a gentle chime but an authoritative sound that demanded immediate obedience. In some schools, it was a large, heavy handbell, rung with vigor by a teacher or a designated prefect. In others, a piercing electric bell would shatter the air. This sound ruled everything. It told you when to start lessons, when to break for playtime, when playtime was over, and when you were finally free to go home. There was no arguing with the bell. Its ring was law. Its sound became so ingrained in your consciousness that you could almost feel it coming moments before it rang, a Pavlovian response that stayed with you long after you left school. Number 4. Morning assembly. Nearly every school day began with the whole school gathering for morning assembly. You would file into the main hall and sit on the polished wooden floor, or on rows of benches, class by class. The air would fill with the sound of hymns, sung with varying degrees of enthusiasm, accompanied by a teacher or the head teacher, playing an upright piano, or, in grander schools, an organ. The head taker would then take to the stage to deliver notices, celebrate achievements, and often impart a moral lesson or a story with a message. This was a moment of collective stillness and reflection, a formal start to the day that reinforced the school's values and the authority of its leaders. Number 5. Wearing strict school uniforms. School uniforms in the 1960s and 70s were not a casual affair. They were mandatory, and the rules were strictly enforced. For boys, this typically meant gray shorts or trousers, a white or gray shirt, a school tie, a blazer or jumper, and regulation black shoes. For girls, it was often a pinafore or skirt, a blouse, and perhaps a cardigan, with specific rules about sock color and hairstyle. Any deviation was spotted immediately. A missing tie, the wrong colored socks, or scuffed shoes would result in a reprimand. The uniform was a great leveler, intended to instill a sense of discipline and belonging. Number 6. Sitting in wooden desks. Classrooms were filled with rows of heavy, sturdy wooden desks, many of which had seen generations of pupils. Most had a lift-up lid, revealing a space inside to store your exercise books, pens, and perhaps a secret comic or a bag of sweets. These desks were not pristine. Their surfaces were a tapestry of history, marked with decades of carvings, initials etched with a compass point, and the dark, indelible stains of leaked ink from fountain pens. The lid would often slam down with a loud bang, and the faint, musty smell of old wood and paper would greet you every time you opened it. They were solid, dependable, and a world away from the lightweight plastic and metal furniture of today. Number 7. Using chalk and blackboards. The blackboard was the focal point of the classroom, and the teacher's primary tool was a simple stick of chalk. Lessons were written out in elegant cursive, diagrams were drawn, and maths problems were solved in white dust. The squeak of chalk on the board was a familiar soundtrack to your education. Being asked to stay behind to clean the blackboard was a common chore. You would use a damp cloth or a dusty wooden-backed eraser, sending clouds of chalk dust into the air that settled on every surface and left a distinctive, dry smell in the room. Number 8. Learning with exercise books. Your schoolwork was meticulously recorded in exercise books, with lined or squared paper. Great emphasis was placed on handwriting, and you would spend hours practicing your cursive, ensuring your letters were perfectly formed and your work was neat. Presentation was paramount. If you made a mistake, there was no easy way to fix it. Typex was a rare luxury, and rubbers were often forbidden for ink work. The correct procedure was to cross out the error with a single, straight line, using a ruler. A messy, blotted, or heavily corrected page was a sign of a careless mind, and your teacher would not be impressed. Number 9. The fear of the teacher's voice. Teachers in the 60s and 70s commanded respect, and often a degree of fear. They rarely needed to raise their voice. A change in tone was enough to silence a noisy classroom in an instant. The phrase, "Stop talking and face the front," was delivered with an authority that left no room for argument. You knew not to speak out of turn, and the fear of being singled out for talking or not paying attention was a powerful motivator to behave. This was an era where the teacher's word was final, and their control over the classroom was absolute. Number 10. School dinners in the hall. Lunchtime meant filing into the dining hall for a hot school dinner. The experience was often a formal and highly regulated affair. In many schools, talking was either forbidden or kept to a low whisper. You sat at long tables, and the meals were served by dinner ladies from large metal trolleys. The food was simple, hearty, and designed to be filling. Mince with mashed potatoes, stew, and liver and onions were common staples, often followed by a pudding like sponge cake with pink custard or semolina. The aim was to provide a nutritious, hot meal, and the experience was more about sustenance than culinary delight. Number 11. Being forced to eat everything. One of the most vivid memories for many is the unwavering rule that you had to clear your plate. Waste not. Want not was the prevailing philosophy. Refusing to eat something, whether it was lumpy, mashed potato, gristly meat, or overcooked cabbage, was simply not tolerated. Children were often made to sit at the table long after their friends had gone out to play, staring at a plate of cold, unappetizing food until they had eaten every last bit. This strict rule, born from a post-war mentality of thrift, left a lasting impression on a generation of schoolchildren. Number 12. Milk bottles at break time. As part of a government scheme to improve child health, every pupil under the age of 7 and later, all primary pupils received a free 1/3 pint bottle of milk each day. These small glass bottles would be delivered to the school in crates and handed out during morning break. The experience of drinking it was highly dependent on the season. In the summer, the milk would often be lukewarm and slightly sour by the time you drank it. In the winter, it could be semi-frozen, and you'd have to wait for the block of icy milk at the top to thaw. The ritual of piercing the foil lid with your straw was a universal part of the infant school day. Number 13. Playtime in all-weather. Break time was almost always held outdoors, regardless of the weather. Rain or shine, you were sent out into the playground for a blast of fresh air. Coats were often discouraged, even on cold days, under the belief that running around would keep you warm. The playground was your kingdom, a concrete or tarmac space where you could burn off energy. A scraped knee from a fall on the hard surface, patched up by the school nurse with a dab of antiseptic, was a common injury and a badge of honor. Number 14. Playground games. Playground activities were entirely self-organized. There were no structured play sessions led by adults. Instead, children created their own entertainment, with a few simple props and a lot of imagination. Skipping ropes were ever present, with complex rhymes and chants accompanying the jumpers. Marbles were a serious business, with intense competitions for keepsies. Other popular games included hopscotch, with courts chalked onto the tarmac. British Bulldog, a chaotic and often banned running game. And What's the Time, Mr. Wolf? These games were passed down through generations of pupils, their rules understood without ever being formally taught. Number 15. Discipline and punishments. Discipline was strict, and punishments were straightforward. Talking in class might earn you a public scolding, or being made to stand in the corner. More serious offenses could lead to detention, where you would stay behind after school to write lines, "I must not talk in class," written 100 times, or complete extra work. In the 1960s and early 70s, corporal punishment was still in use in many schools. The threat of the slipper or the cane, administered by the head teacher for serious misbehavior, was a powerful deterrent that loomed over the school day. This culture of discipline, while harsh by today's standards, was an accepted part of the educational landscape. Which of these school memories do you remember the most? Let us know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if these moments brought back memories and you want to see more nostalgic content.